This is Ask the Mayor on KWBE, our weekly program with Beatrice Mayor Stan Wirth. Have a special edition today with Chief of Police Bruce Lang with us as well. Just about to become a member of the retirement club here.
Yes, I am, Doug.
Counting the days, or do you just kind of let them go by and see what happens?
Well, it's been pretty busy, actually, so yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and it'll be a great time.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Chief. Good chief for the city of Beatrice all these years?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And someone who, and I've mentioned it to him before, someone who has operated a department with a very even keel, heavy-handed when he needs to be, and understanding when he also needs to be, and hasn't created any real issues within our community. So I think that's really important, that we've got a really strong community-minded individual in that position, and we certainly look forward to the next individual to do the same.
Chief, 3 decades as chief, roughly, and there, and then what, 40-some in law enforcement,
About
if I remember
46,
right. What do you think that last day is going to be like? Do you dread it? Do you just say, "Hey, it's my time. I'm moving off into the sunset"?
Well,
here?
you know, I announced fairly early to give the city an opportunity to have somebody picked and in place so that we didn't have a big gap, and that was the good side of that. The bad side of that is I think by the time I retire, people are going to be gone already. You know, enough about all this history. Get out of here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. 3 decades is a long time in any job. I mean, and you know, the days are a little longer at times, and you can't do what you did, you know, sometimes 20 years ago. I think we're all like that. You know,
Right.
that we just get to the point where we need to take a break.
Well, that's exactly right. You know, it requires mental energy and new ideas and be open to new things. And I've tried to always be, open to trying new things and so forth, and not being that guy. But you just naturally, as you get older, you're a little more set in your ways, and certain things, just aren't going to fly with you, and because it's outside your comfort zone or whatever. So, that part of it is, it'll be good that a new person comes in, and 30 years is a long time. In Nebraska, police and fire chiefs are civil service protected, what that means is they have to be fired for cause. Mm-hmm. And what that does is that prevents new mayors coming in, quite honestly, from coming in and saying, "Hey, I want my buddy from over here now to be the chief." And so you're out and the new guy's in. And because that's actually the norm, the normal police chiefs are, I think their tenure is about 4 years. So in Nebraska, we have longer serving chiefs, and it's because it takes the politics out of it, which obviously I think is a good thing.
You were appointed many, many years ago by then Mayor Dave Marstad. How much do you remember back of that? What was it like coming here from Papillion? La
Vista is where I worked, right?
Yeah, and every time somebody takes a new job, they kind of have that, wow, what am I getting into? How am I going to start out? Is everybody going to get along with me? That type of thing. What was it like for you?
Well, that point in my career, I was in La Vista, and I was appointed to a position called lieutenant, which was actually the assistant chief there, and then right away was sent to Northwestern University to some post education for police staff and command people from all over the country. Incredibly valuable training. So I had that under my belt, and then when I got back, my chief pointed at me and said, "We're going to become nationally accredited." I go, "Oh, that's good." And he says, "And you're going to be the accreditation manager," not really knowing what I was getting into. And that was 2 years of my life. You had 760 standards you had to meet. We were the first-class city in Nebraska to be accredited.
I didn't know that.
And it was really cool. It was really hard. I can't even describe how long it was. I'd never really written much policy before that, and now all of a sudden you're writing copious numbers of policies. Okay. And we received national accreditation. Well, about that time, and my chief at the time was named John Packett. He ended up being the chief in Grand Forks, North Dakota, where he retired from. Anyway, he was all about development, and so he came in to me one day and he says, "Hey, Beatrice, Nebraska is looking for a police chief. You ought to give that a try." So I'm like, okay. And I really liked what I was doing. I really liked the department in La Vista.
Was he hinting it. maybe.
No, that
Trying
was
to
just the
edge
way
you
he
out the
liked
door.
it. That's the way he took great pride in having his staff. He had
good.
several staff members he was from Lincoln, and he had several of his guys from Lincoln that were chiefs, and he just took great pride in doing that. So anyway, I come down here, and I had all of this knowledge that was so fresh in my head that probably made me look a lot smarter than I was, quite honestly. And Mayor Marstead then was a young, aggressive guy, and he had lots of changes he wanted to see made. Chief Lucroth was retiring after a long career here, and the whole community was changing. We had a new fire chief, we had a new school superintendent. It was just a really exciting time.
Yeah. You mentioned the accreditation. Usually accreditation programs, you have to re-up or you have to take stuff to keep that accreditation. Is that the case in police departments too? Or
Yes.
You have to, okay.
Yep, they have to apply for reaccreditation, and I'm not sure where La Vista is at with theirs, if they've maintained those over the years or not.
I see. Okay. Since you were appointed to now, I imagine a lot of change in terms of policies, requirements, technology, for one. I can't believe what's happened. You look at the inside of a patrol car now, it's like,
crazy,
how
isn't
do
it?
you even get inside the thing or whatever? But how much has it changed in that time frame?
Well, we used to, the police department used to be held, as Dave Marstead liked to say, in the back of a pickup truck. It was in the old, which where Main Street is now. That was the entire police department, and literally people walked around with case files under their arm because they had no offices, they had no interview rooms, there was no computers. There was no computers. There were none, and they didn't know what computers were, and computers were just kind of really getting mainstream then. But I can remember asking then Jim Bauer, the city administrator, during the interview process. I said, "Now, how many officers do you have out on a shift?" And he said, "Well, with the supervisor, 4." And I said, "How many patrol cars do you have?" And they said 3. And I'm not a math major, but that wasn't going to work. And so those were just the kind of challenges we came. It had operated on a shoestring, and it needed to be modernized. And of course, money is always an issue. So the changes that I was making seemed really monumental because from where we started, they were probably more mainstream than everybody realized. But it was a lot.
There's been a lot of change policy-wise, legal requirements and things change a lot where officers have to conduct business a different way today, or quite a bit different today as they did maybe, 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Well, probably with the body camera, the advent of body cameras, that's changed a little bit of how officers deal with the public. Not that they dealt with them badly before, but I want you to think about, you go to work at your job and you put a camera on your chest and you turn it on when you get to work, and everything you say and do throughout the day is recorded.
Well, I think we'd be in trouble.
Yeah, that's not a very pleasant way to operate. Officers today, that's second nature to them. They don't think much about it.
Yeah.
So, we talk about complaints and things you might get over the years. If we get a complaint about an officer, it's almost always the same thing: is that the officer was rude or didn't give me the care and that I deserve. And so, what that tells me is that the expectations of the community are pretty high. And so they expect the officers to be cordial all the time. Well, that doesn't always work in our business, unfortunately. But that's still, if I got to have a complaint, that's the kind of complaints over the years we want to deal with, is that maybe somebody spoke to somebody in the wrong tone of voice or something, not some of the other things that you see.
Yeah. What's been the best thing about being a chief in the size of a city of Beatrice? I think we sometimes assume that everybody's going to start at this level and they're going to move up to the bigger city or whatever, or take a job in some huge metropolitan area. But you've been here 3 decades, and cities, basically population stayed roughly the same. It's changed in some other ways, but what's been the thinking behind that as far as wanting to be in a community this size?
Well, in law enforcement, you don't generally jump from what we call first-class cities, which are 5,000 to smaller than Lincoln and Omaha. So Grand Island, Norfolk, all of us are kind of in that same pool. A guy might go from Beatrice to Grand Island, but hardly ever do you see someone go from Grand Island to Lincoln or from Bellevue to Omaha. Those metro kind of police departments tend to promote from within, or as we saw in Lincoln, they do a national search and bring in someone from San Francisco or whatever. No, and I knew that. And so you have to look at, what are you here for? And I was here for the community, the school district, raised my family here. It wasn't very long, and we got really comfortable. And so once you get comfortable, you got to ask yourself, why do I want to move?
Yeah.
Do I want to move just for the sake of moving? And those kind of things. And I really liked what I was doing. I felt like the community appreciated me and I appreciated them. And I think that's something you always shoot for, because not everybody has that. And so that was one of the factors. Then my wife got a decent job here, and she's a registered nurse, and she had given up a great job to come here. That was really hard. And but nonetheless, we settled in pretty well.
Okay. Chief of Police Bruce Lang, Mayor Stan Wirth with us today on Ask the Mayor. We'll have more in just a moment. Back on Ask the Mayor with Mayor Stan Wirth and Beatrice Police Chief Bruce Lang today. Bruce is retiring here in the next couple of weeks after a 3-decade career as Beatrice Police Chief. I wanted to have a little fun with this. Best move you ever made as a chief here?
Probably the best move we ever made, probably two of them.
Okay.
And first one was regionalizing the dispatch center. Back in 1992 when I came, we had 3 dispatch centers in Gage County.
Wow.
And you don't get more inefficient than that. And so consolidating that into one, and then adding the city of Crete and the city in Richardson County, and hopefully down the road they'll be able to add more, just makes that so much better for the community and so much safer, that you get a level of service when you call 911 that no matter whether you're in rural Richardson County or you're driving down the Highway 77 by Crete, you're going to get the same level of service.
And that's been a trend everywhere, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, it's going to be in the next 10 years. It'll be the standard. And so probably the other thing is the addition of our victim assistance program. One of the things we did early in the late 90s, I did a community survey of the community, obviously, but that talked about, or that asked questions about delivery of services. And one of the things that came out of that was people felt like after they reported something or had a case started, they didn't have any idea whatever happened to it. And they felt kind of like we left them. And so we started that program. Carrie McGrury did a great job of getting that program not just great locally, but really a kind of a model statewide. And we're one of the few places that houses it in the police department. And that allows us to get in on the ground floor. And Chevis Cruel, who is now our victim coordinator, does just a great job of, something happens at 11 o'clock at night, 7 or 8 in the morning, they're talking to those victims and helping them through the process. And this is what they can expect. And they hold their hand and sit with them throughout the entire process.
One of the other things that came to mind, too, for a city this size was kind of just popped into my mind was the start of the school resource officer program,
right.
too. That was
it was really good. That you have to have a lot of forward-thinking people to have those things happen. You have to, not just your city, but as school districts as well. And, we've been fortunate over the years to have really good superintendents. Really good superintendents. If you think back, the superintendent that was here when I started in 1992, Steve Joel.
Yeah.
And
he kind of moved up the ladder
a
little bit.
he left me in the dust and went on to bigger and better things.
He's going to join your club also.
Yes, he is. He retires in June.
Yeah.
In fact, I still talk to him quite a bit, and so I give him. A hard time.
Dave and I have been saying all of our friends or all the people we've worked with for years are all retiring, and how did we miss the memo? I don't know what the deal is here. It's kind of, but
you're going to have to increase your age
yeah,
just a little more.
Get a couple more years maybe, and we'll.
Well, that's actually picking that day.
Yeah.
is not easy.
It's a hard choice.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It seems like it would be simple, but there's a lot of moving parts financially as well as organizationally. So
And if you enjoy what you do, you wonder, do I really want to leave it at this point, or do I want to wait another 4 or 5 or whatever?
Well, and I got it. I'm not being corny here, but I can tell you that I've loved this job since I started, and The hardest part about retiring is giving my
All
baby
of a
to
sudden
somebody else.
It's done with. And
Yeah,
then you-
well, and I want to make sure that it's taken care of,
Yeah.
and my people are taken care of, and because that means a lot to me.
Any you look back on the career, is there a particular do-over you'd want? Was there something you did, you thought, boy, I thought that was going to work, and then maybe not? Was there anything that stood out there?
Gosh, one of the things we've always tried to do is keep open mind to trying new things.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those things work, and some of them don't work. Yeah. But I'd rather have some failures than not try things, because you get some great successes out of those things. So I can't really think of one individually thing, but if you ask my staff, they probably bring up several. But yeah, so
I'm not going to ask him.
Yeah. Meetings with the new chief,
Mm-hmm.
John Hickman. How's that been going? He's getting his feet wet now, kind of learning the ins and outs of the department. He's got to take over right on the week following June
Right.
2nd is your retirement date, if I remember right.
June 3rd is mine.
Or June
Yep.
3rd, yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
Who's counting?
How's that going? Yeah, who's counting?
Actually, it's gone really well. He is in town,
Yeah.
and they are house hunting, and I believe they might even found one finally. And so he's stopped in multiple times, and I've met with him. We've talked briefly about different things, and then he'll start actually Monday in kind of a transition thing. I'm still the appointed chief until the 3rd, and then he's the appointed chief starting the 4th. But the reality is he'll learn things and kind of watch, and actually what we do is transfer all of the chief duties to Captain Dan Moss, who's the second in command. And so he'll be doing all of those things, so the new chief can just watch and observe. I'll still be there in case there's a question or something statutorily that's got to be done, but it'll be a transition that we'll go through.
Your department, yourself, have always been very community-minded. You hold events every now and then. I know you had a big push to try to have people voluntarily sign up if they have special needs family members to help them out. You got Special Olympics, Torch Run. Got that coming up here pretty soon, don't you?
Yes, we do. It's next Wednesday, and we encourage everybody to come out at the end of the Torch Run. People will be meeting on 5th Street. I just found out, actually last night, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to attend. My brother's having an emergency surgery, not emergency, but a serious surgery, and I need to be there with him on Wednesday, so I will not be there. I'm really not very happy about that. But our relationship with Special Olympics, the old saying is, you get more back from them than you give is certainly true, because one of the things we found is that things like Special Olympics, they touch so many members of your community that you had no idea. When we do the basketball game, and COVID kind of put that halt to that for a while, but we went from 10 people in the old middle school gym to the last time we did it, 400 plus people, and the pep band and cheerleaders and the whole thing. And you looked in the crowd and you said, well, I didn't know so-and-so was involved in Special Olympics, or I didn't know that, well, it's my nephew, or it's my niece, or it's my, and it just was really, really cool how that all turned out.
Favorite things in retirement? What are you going to spend your time on when you finally do?
Well, until diesel got to $6 a gallon,
I was going to say,
the wife and I had big plans of
bad timing there.
take our motorhome and do some traveling. We're still going to do that. We might have to pare it back a little. We have places we've always liked to camp and travel and see things, and so we'll try to do that more when we get into retirement.
Good. We'll be back to wrap up our program on Ask the Mayor with Mayor Stan Wirth and Chief of Police Bruce Lang in just a moment. Back on Ask the Mayor to wrap up things with Beatrice Mayor Stan Wirth and Chief of Police Bruce Lang. Stan will touch on a few things here in the time we have left here. Outcome of the large item pickup campaign. I know the numbers will come later, but how did that go generally?
Went really well. I think we had like 713 residents sign up for it. Now that's about 60% of what we normally would have. Normally around 1,200 to 1,300
You did
would
set
sign
the
up for
cutoff
it.
date, though, too.
But I beg your pardon?
You did set the cutoff date, too. Did that have anything to do with it?
I don't think so.
Oh, really?
And it was Monday through Wednesday of this week. Today is the final cleanup of anybody that they may have missed. And I think in registering some locations in the registration process, some folks got a little confused and got off. Matter of fact, one of the addresses was to pick up on 5th Street in Kearney. And so there was just a little confusion there. So the people call and say, you forgot to pick us up, and so that's going to be done and cleaned up today. Street Superintendent Jason Moore and his staff did a really good job and indicated yesterday at the Board of Public Works meeting that everything went really, really smooth.
Okay. Any thoughts on the election, the voting Tuesday? We had two candidates advance on for your position that you'll vacate at the end of this year, and Council President Mike McLean finished top vote getter. But any thoughts on that and the statewide races?
Well, I'm glad that the voters chose the individuals that they did, especially in the mayor's race. I think there is really good continuity between those two candidates, Bob Morgan and Gary Barnard. They've both been on the city council. They know the processes that we go through. They know kind of the direction and philosophy of how to better improve our community. They are both very much economic development minded, and with all of the incentive programs that we have today and those individuals who apply for those incentives, I think tells the story very well that we are certainly business driven in our community and want to see economic development flourish.
Okay. Armor coating work starting next week if the weather allows. I think that's Wednesday, so don't park on those streets when...
begins next week. Yeah. It's only going to take about 3 days to do. It's kind of a oil base that they put down with an aggregate on top of it. And it goes pretty quickly, pretty smoothly, but certainly don't want folks to park on those designated streets. All of them have been notified. They've been notified by letter, or we just knock on their door and let them know when it's going to happen, just to give everybody full advance notice of what's going on.
I see you got a pretty big stretch of Lincoln Street
there is.
down there, 8th to 18th or something like that. So, water park season, not far away. That's usually Memorial Day weekend when it kicks off. Again, if weather allows, that's always the big variable in that. But what can you tell? I know season passes are on sale now, but what about rates as far as...
Rates are same as they have been in many years. I don't know that in recent memory that I can even recall when we increased the rates. So those are going to stay the same. The labor that we need for the water park has been hired. And we may open the splash pad today, so don't get your hopes up too high. But because of the weather the way it is, there have been some inquiries as to when it's going to be open. Normally it would be Memorial Day weekend, but the plan is to possibly open it yet this week just because of the temperatures and kind of get some of the young kids out there to have fun.
Before we wrap things up, Chief Dave wanted me to ask me, who was your co-pilot in the cruiser car thing that time you were out at the...
Phil Dittbrenner.
Okay, we were wondering.
Yeah, Phil Dittbrenner, yep. And, he was a deputy years ago, was on our drug task force, and then he became the veteran services officer, and now he's a private businessman. So,
how did that go with you two guys at the wheel?
Not so well. not so well. He ran the throttle and I ran the steering wheel, and neither one of us did it very well.
Didn't finish in the running or anything like that?
No.
Yeah. Well, I have just a couple or 3 minutes. One thing I did want to say before we wrap up, we appreciate all the help, Bruce, over the years from you and your department, because media and police agencies, I mean, they try to get along as well as they can, but you have different goals. You have to go by a certain number of procedures, and you can't say everything all the time.
Right.
We always want the information right away, but we hope we kind of meshed together pretty well.
Well, and I think we have, and I certainly appreciate the relationship we've had both with you and the Daily Sun and local media here. I think has been really, really easy and good to work with. And most people don't know this, but Doug and I played high school baseball against each other.
And we didn't know that till we'd been here about 10 years.
Yeah, we didn't even know it till we tell war stories about how great we were and realized, A, we weren't that great, and B, we played against each other. So.
Well, and I knew he was from Creston, and I was from Centerville, Iowa, and we would play them every year in maybe a doubleheader, kind of home and away one year or something. And I thought, what year did you play? And then all of a sudden we find out we were playing against
the-
each other.
So
Didn't
yeah,
know it, so.
but certainly, it goes back to everything. Always goes back to people and people and attitudes, and we both have a job to do, and I know the media has a job to do, and I tried to give them as much information as I could without causing grief for our investigations or whatever, and I think you guys have always been very sensitive to that and understanding.
Well, in today's social media world, I know whenever things go south or there's something bad happens, it's not long that somebody gets on there and, targets police or blames somebody and has all the answers to the world's problems. And I've never been able to figure out how your officers put up with that and still do the job they do. So
well, and let me just say in closing here that that's true. However, the community has always been really supportive. In fact, I told Chief Hickman this, if one of our officers is in distress and was being harmed at an intersection, it wouldn't be long before there'd be several vehicles stopped and people out helping that person. Mm-hmm. Now, by that person, I mean the officer. And the community has always been supportive, and sure, you're going to have those naysayers, and we're going to see stuff but at the same time, they also have countless numbers of people that come in and are supportive and will stick up for, hey, don't say that about Officer so and so because he coaches my kid's baseball team and I know him. He's a great guy, and so I think that the officers know at the end of the day that the community has their back.
Well, Chief, we appreciate all the help over the years, and happy retirement to you and Dawn and your family, and
Thanks.
Best wishes for the future.
Thanks, Doug.
Chief Bruce Lang, Mayor Stan Wirth, thanks for being in, Mayor.